A lot of support there, Luke, from my very savvy viewers, but
Yes.
I have a little concern. The only reason we ended up with mandatory hotel quarantine, if you remember all the way back, was we tried home isolation. We tried to keep people at home. So many people broke the rules.
Yep.
And we ended up with COVID in the community, which is why we said if you come back, you've got to go into hotel quarantine. Now, if we take them on trust again because they've been vaccinated, what worries me is all these experts are saying we think you can still get COVID if you are vaccinated. It's just that it won't be as bad. You're not going to die, but you could still have it and you could still pass it on. So people could come back from overseas with COVID. They might be okay in terms they won't die. But if they were to break their self-isolation, home quarantine and got out and about in the community, we're back where we started, aren't we?
Well, we are back where we started. And imagine coming back here knowing you haven't got it and you're vaccinated and you're told, now you can't go anywhere. You can't even go and buy a meat pie at the 7-Eleven, which someone did from hotel quarantine at some point. So that risk will continue, absolutely. But you know what, Peter? I think the question's even bigger is, do we want absolutely eliminate this whole thing, or are we happy to live with suppression? Because you and I both know there'll be those within the body politic, the media class and elsewhere, who'll see one thing go wrong and then blow it out of all proportion. You've been, and I've watched and listened with great interest, you've not been convinced about, I get the feeling, National Cabinet, and it's come back, I think, a couple of times and caused the PM some discomfort. Well, here's another one, because as you and I both know, the attitude to COVID-19 in Sydney is different to what it is in Brisbane, different to what it is in Melbourne. Now, if we can live with a couple of cases, then let's do this opening up. But we can't accept
I'm with you,
and then go berserk.
I'm with you, and I'm into suppression, not elimination, absolutely, and I want the borders open. I just want to make sure before we did that and take people on trust to stay at home, that our most vulnerable are vaccinated. I'm just a bit concerned with the timetable. I think the timetable's lagging. I'd want the PM to say, OK, you know, we're at herd immunity. Our most vulnerable, our elderly, our sick, etc., they are all looked after before we took this step. Yeah,
I agree with you entirely. But we were talking earlier this week on radio about the vaccination program, which obviously is in a bit of a mess. But look, I've noticed over the last couple of days, and I hear from all sorts of people, the anti-vaxxers, everyone, as you would. But in the last couple of days, and particularly with the news from last night, I've got a real concern that when we move to the next stage of the rollout, people have already said, nah, not for me. And we had that Lake Macquarie woman in New South Wales last night. There's confirmation still to come about what exactly happened there. But I had friends telling me today, I heard it on the radio, it was a vaccine. I said, no, it wasn't. They said, oh, yeah, I heard it on the radio. I said, no, you didn't. You might have thought you heard it. We've got a real crisis here.
Let me just jump in there. So just so we're very clear, 48-year-old woman, she has died after complications from developing blood clots.
Correct.
However, Department of Health, they've got a statement out there said it's not yet established whether there's a link between how she died and the COVID vaccine. Although I have to say, Luke, I will take a jab as quick as anyone, right, in a New York minute, but I'm reluctant to have the AZ vaccine. I will have a vaccine, but I am hoping and praying that I end up with Pfizer.
Well, there you go. And I can tell you from the listener feedback I've had, there's now a heap of people in that, not in this vulnerable group, the 1A, 1B, but the next level, who are hearing what they want to hear or hearing half the story and based on that made their mind up. So if we're going to say, righto, let's roll this thing out, and in 4 months, 20% of the population has formed the view that they don't want to get vaccinated, or 30% or 40%, then what do we do? And this comes back to what I said last week. Government have to get their hands involved here. Daniel Andrews, even though we've got different, you and I have got similar views about his ability to lead through this, he fronted up every day. So what? Give him an Emmy. But the PM or Greg Hunt or the Chief Health Officer every night has to be in people's lounge rooms, because I reckon we've got a vaccination, at one point hesitation. I think it's now reluctance. That's what I'm feeling from my listeners' communication. But it's a really big problem.
I think it's a massive problem. And of course, you know, we're not seeing people die around us like they are in Britain.
Exactly.
I recently was talking to a guy, a doctor who just returned from Britain. He knew colleagues that had died. He knew people in his street who had died. We're not talking about old people here. We're talking about people in their 50s and 60s. So it's front of mind. They're all racing out there to get the vaccine. We're seeing it in the United States where they were bad managers of COVID. They actually have been pretty phenomenal in getting the vaccines out. Because we're actually so insulated and protected and it's not front of mind anymore, I think that's where the laggards are coming into play. I think there's a reluctance with AZ. I genuinely don't think that there's a vaccination hesitancy, but if the government doesn't move, if the communication strategy doesn't improve and fast, hesitancy around one brand of vaccine is going to go right across the broader issue, and we'll have people holding back from even Pfizer. So this is the big task for them. Hey, what did you make about, there's a couple of Australians, we've got 35,000 stranded overseas still, but we've got a couple of them who have had enough and been waiting a year or so to come home. They've gone to a UN Human Rights Committee and they've got a ruling that says the government's got to take them back. Now, we shouldn't be in a position where we've got Australians who are not able to get home, have we?
No, absolutely not. To the government's great credit, at least they cleared the initial backlog. What that led to was a second or a third or a fourth backlog. I don't know the answer. I feel like saying, OK, if you're in Europe, here are the dates. There'll be 5, 6, 10 flights. We're going to bring you home. Here's the date. Make sure you're here on this occasion. North America, your turn. Surely we've got to just have one massive effort organised by government and get this done. I assume there's not only 2 Australians overseas that want to come back, but please get it off the front or second or third page. God.
Yeah, and look, I ran some statistics earlier in the week where we've had a whole lot of people come home in the last month, but it's overwhelmingly been non-Australians. It's overwhelmingly been migrant workers and others. Movie stars in Queensland. Thank you, Anastasia Palaszczuk. I think that's where people are getting cranky. Interesting in Victoria, hit hardest by COVID, really struggling to get workers to go back into their offices. In part, it's, reluctance about getting COVID. It's pretty much eradicated in the country, but nonetheless. But more, it's actually about they've had a taste of working from home and they love it. Now, a lot of these businesses have called in psychologists to pick up the phone and get these staff on the line and basically coax them into the office. I listened to one of the psychologists on radio today, and she's fairly sympathetic to the cause of the worker, but she did make the point, not every job you can do from home, and it's tough on businesses. They're all trying to get back on their feet. A fair day's work for a fair day's pay. I mean, if you've got to turn up to work, you've got to turn up to work. I mean, I had to come in here all the way through lockdown. I can't do it from home. It is what it is, Luke. Yeah,
well, that's exactly right. I mean, let's remember what happened here. To keep you safe, we did what we had to do at work so you could work at home. But, I was talking to someone involved in an office who's seeing this happen right now, not in Melbourne, but in another capital city. And they say, you know what? The staff see someone do it. Oh, I can't possibly come back. I'm worried about, I think they often put forward the excuse is public transport. I'm on a bus or a train and there's other people. A co-worker sees that and says, oh, gee, I'm going to have a crack at that. Then someone else, gee, I might have a crack at that. So it is it's a tough one. I come from the school you do, not exactly, but you know what I mean. Hey, your job's here. Come on back. Fair day's pay, fair day's work, etc., etc. We got rid of COVID-19. Come back to work. We need to strategise. I need you here. I don't want to do that. Well, sorry, they're the rules. I'm happy to live with that, but we don't live in that world anymore, Peter, do we?
We don't. I feel for business because there are, as I said, I mean, being able to work from home is a higher up in the business, middle class sort of career. There are so many jobs we rely on where people are at the front line. There's no place to do it but at work. Well, I know you've got to be at work too, like me.
I do.
Luke Grant. I love having you on the show. Love having you on the show. Thanks for your time.